What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and everyone's talked about some of the most popular and more well-known video game levels, from desert levels to water levels, ice levels. But there are some levels that are kinda lesser known. One such level being in the castle level, which basically sees you searching through a castle, a palace, traveling through a castle, a palace, or even a fortress. And considering how there haven't been that many in the countdown community that have counted down these, I thought might as well decide to be the first and make one to basically start the sort of trend. That being said, it's time to count down my top 10 favorite castle levels in video games. The rule here is one per franchise, and they don't have to be from games I've played. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting off first at number 10, we have Baron Castle from Final Fantasy IV. And obviously, this one was kind of less confusing because for me, it was actually between this and of course, Figaro Castle from Final Fantasy VI, which says a lot considering how good fighters and good party members Edgar and Sabin are in that game. However, I gotta give it to Final Fantasy IV and Baron Castle due to how it plays into most of Cecil's role, since you get to see a good amount of the castle and the castle town at the beginning of Final Fantasy IV before he's sent out to the nearby village of Espers to, destroy it. But it's not until after he ends up becoming Cecil becomes a paladin, then he ends up making a return to Baron in order to find out what's going on with the king and why he's acting this way. Basically, this is kind of interesting as you're now facing off against the forces of Baron and basically two of your allies in Yang and Kain. But of course, you eventually learn that the king has long since not been himself, thanks to Golbez, as well as facing off against one of the four elemental fiends, Cagnasso. Basically, this is kind of an interesting one, and it's kind of a battleground that you wouldn't expect to be so interesting. Plus, you do get Cid in this one, so there's that. Either way, Baron Castle's just number 10 because basically the perfect one to start at number 10 because even though it shows up in 2, it's largely not a full set piece for the entire game, so there's that. Yeah. Moving on next at number 9, we have the Citadel of Science from Mega Man 6. Yeah. Moving on from Final Fantasy to Mega Man, and honestly, for the first time, I'm surprised I have never talked about Mega Man 6 before. I mean, granted I have because Mega Man 6 is actually a pretty interesting game. And this is because each of the Robot Masters represent a specific country, from Saudi Arabia, United States, Canada, Greece, Brazil, China, Japan, and of course, this country, the United Kingdom, aka England. Yeah. Surprisingly enough, Citadel of Science is a location where you face off against Nightman. And considering how he's known as Nightman, it's kind of fitting that his entire stage is basically a British castle. Like, basically a castle in a forest at sunset. And almost seems like something out of a medieval storybook. Then when you get in, you're basically just coming across a whole bunch of booby traps, like trap doors in the floor, to spike traps, bounce traps, certain panels that will flip and send out enemies. I mean, all of them are kind of interesting. And when you eventually get to face off against Nightman, yeah, you're facing off against your standard typical knight with a mace, which is kind of awesome to say the least. Granted, it's... And again, surprisingly enough, we haven't revisited it, and thankfully, Battle Network kind of improved upon Nightman and its medieval aspect. But even with that, I still kind of remember this. So I gotta say. Moving on next at number 8, we have Oso Castle from Mother 3. And yeah, Mother 3. Yeah, this one is kind of an interesting one. Mainly because many of us tried and true Nintendo fans have been constantly calling for Nintendo to basically release Mother 3 out here in the West for us to enjoy. Not that much success. But other than that, for most of us who are able to get a hold of a fan-translated copy, which surprisingly enough, the only way to do so is to emulate it. Seriously, just that's the only way to do so. But either way, it's kind of an interesting game to say the least. And it's fun, if not difficult. Seriously, the battles of Mother 3 are pretty difficult to handle at first, but once you get used to it, it's pretty much fun. And that being said, Oso Castle plays a role in it just 3 times throughout the entire story, making his first appearance in Chapter 2, where you have to play as one of your main party members, Duster, who of course is a former thief who has to search through Oso Castle to find a treasure in a mythical egg. Eventually, and of course, he has to venture into Oso Castle, which is basically your standard haunted castle, full of traps, basically decrepit floors that you could essentially fall into, and ghosts. And of course, ghosts galore. And of course, he eventually ends up running into Kumatora, who is the princess of Oso Castle. And of course, who essentially helps them out. And yeah, they eventually do end up finding it. Even with this, it plays into the next chapter, Chapter 3, where you play as Salsa, who alongside his handler, or Facade, basically ends up searching for that same egg, only to basically be beaten to it by Duster and Kumatora. And even further in once you eventually get access to Lucas, like chapter 4 onward, you get a chance to re-enter Oso Castle, where you face off against a super boss in Lord Passion, a ghostly conductor, where if you're able to defeat him, you're able to get the ultimate weapon for Duster himself, which is a pair of boots. I mean, it's weird, but either way, it kind of works. That being said, I know this defeats the purpose, but maybe they should fix the floors. Someone's gonna get seriously hurt falling down one of them. Moving on next at number 7, we have Parfum Palace from Pokemon X and Y. Yeah, simple thing. We already know that Pokemon Legends ZA is going to be released here in the West tomorrow. Well, specifically in the United States tomorrow. And honestly, it's been a long time since, even with that, it's been a long time since Kalos has gotten any attention. That being said, even with Lumio, the fact that we're basically exploring the entirety of Lumio City and Legends ZA, it kind of doesn't hold that much of a candle to X and Y, where you got to explore the entirety of the Kalos region, including Parfum Palace, which is basically your standard well-to-do, lavish palatial estate that you essentially have to go to in order to get the Poke Flute from in order to wake up Snorlax. And basically, it's a palatial estate with a full set of gardens in the back. As such, once you get into the palace, you end up meeting the owner, who is looking for his lost Furfrou, who again turns out to be in the gardens. In the gardens. And once you find it, you have to corner it in one of the mazes, in one of the hedge mazes in the back, which really does say a lot. Granted, considering how it's based on the Palace of Versailles, it really doesn't have that much. Though one thing I didn't know is that you could essentially fish for specific Pokemon like Goldeen and Corphish in the little ponds in the back. Honestly, I didn't know that before, and now I know. More you know. Moving on next at number 6, we have Castle McFrights from Luigi's Mansion 3. Honestly, when it comes down to it, a lot of people are wondering just how this would essentially count if Luigi's Mansion 3 is set in a hotel. That much is true, but each floor in the hotel is based on a specific theme, like a movie studio, a garden suite, or even a museum. And surprisingly enough, Castle McFrights is a full-on medieval reenactment, including an amphitheater arena, a hall full of armor, hand-cranked elevators, and a dungeon. There's a water wheel area filled with archers that you have to pass through using Luigi, and a dungeon, which, honestly, those ghosts that essentially are able to, escape from you while you're basically, you get the key, are jerks. And eventually you end up facing off against King McFrights in a jousting match, where you basically just have to try and throw him from his horse before sucking him up. And it's kind of fun, too. So, yeah, really does say a lot. This will be continued in part 2.